Don't push it.
Alright guys, what's happening? And welcome to the Action Channel. So today I think it would be fun to go down memory lane, since 2025 celebrates the 40th anniversary of, yes, a classic 1980s low-budget martial arts ninja film with the title American Ninja. I'll try not to be too nostalgic here, since this movie brings back so many good memories. In a time when I was just a kid and literally believed that someday I would grow up and become a professional ninja myself. Now this might come as a surprise to some of you, but I ended up not becoming a ninja. And that's probably for the best, because the life expectancy of a ninja, at least in the movies, are something like very short, less than an hour and a half. Anyway, in this video I think it would be very interesting to focus on what I consider the best fight scene in the movie and why that is. And you might be a little surprised here. Now first of all, this movie literally has it all. For a low budget movie, which only cost about $1.5 million, what they managed to pull off and put in this film is absolutely spectacular. I mean, it literally has everything from a ton of fight scenes, car chases, motorcycle stunts, helicopter explosions, and so much more. Now, most of the action, of course, deals with hand-to-hand combat. Usually one guy up against maybe an army of 5 or 10 ninjas. And that was just the warm-up round. Alright, so enough talking here. Let's get down to business. What was the best fight scene in American Ninja? Well, in my book, it's pretty obvious. It's the very first meeting with Joe and Jackson.
Hey, I'm talking to you, hero.
And yes, nobody dies in this scene. In fact, nobody really gets hurt, except from Jackson that ended up with a headache and a little bit of a back pain. Or so it looks. And since it was probably the only fight in the entire movie with no casualties or bleeding, why is this fight scene the best? It's pretty obvious. Well, it wasn't so much the fighting itself, because none of these guys were actually real martial artists in real life, even though they both had a background with some athletic skills. And I believe Steve James used to do some boxing as well. And obviously, as you could tell, he was no stranger to the gym. And Michael Dudikoff as an actor was eager to learn everything he possibly could about the part.
I learned so much from doing American Ninja because as an actor playing a martial artist, I had to really know how to do this stuff.
The fight scene itself was choreographed by Richard Norton, that sadly enough just passed away. I recently did a couple of videos about Richard Norton, so feel free to check them out. And I also have a video about Steve James in the playlist under Forgotten Action Stars from the 80s and 90s, if you want to know more about the man. Anyway, back to Richard Norton and the choreography. And as you can see in the film, he came up with all kinds of creative ideas how to make this fight scene more interesting, instead of just the usual kicking and punching. Joe's character actually is using the environment. What made this fight so great was really the game between the two of them, what leads up to the fight itself, and also the aftermath. In the beginning, Joe really just wanted to be left alone. But Jackson and his entire army of soldier buddies have some serious problems with Joe, since they believe that he caused the death of 4 of their friends, which may or may not have been the case. It sort of depends how you look at it. However, he did save a young girl, so there's also that. But as one of the soldiers say in the film, 4 dead bodies to impress a girl. It was a heavy price. What I think makes this scene really, really well is actually the acting itself. And you certainly don't always see this in a martial arts ninja film, where it's usually always about one thing, the fighting, and nothing else. However, Michael Dudikoff had a different approach.
Actor first, martial artist second.
What also made Dudikoff so great in this role was that nobody really knew about him. He wasn't an established actor at this point. If they had hired, let's say, a Tom Cruise or whatever, you wouldn't have believed in it. You would have said, yeah, that's just Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise. So there was something very mysterious about his character. And in some strange way, it totally fit in. Because the more impressive a subject is, like dealing with either science fiction or in this case with ninjas, etc., the more realistic does the rest of the movie need to be, including the characters. So if he had been running around like a typical action star, smoking a cigar, turned to the camera, said something cool, maybe emptied a couple of Uzis, kind of like Commando style, yeah, it would have been cool and entertaining, but so what? It's not like we had not seen that before. Now, you can be a great martial artist in real life, much better than these two guys ever were. However, if you cannot add some realism or bring out certain aspects of your character while you're in the middle of the action or in the fight scene, then what good is it gonna do, honestly? I know a lot of you guys watching are into martial arts, and I expect a lot of people here to disagree with me actually. I just don't necessarily find it interesting to see one guy in a gi walking into a martial arts school and kicking everybody's butt. I mean, it might look cool and fun, but it's like, so what? But what made American Ninja so awesome, other than just be a kick-butt action film, was, as I mentioned, the characters, both Jackson and Joe, but also the girlfriend Patricia, as well as some of the bad guys that are kind of cheesy, which you kind of expect in a movie like this. And you totally buy into the bromance, so to say, between our two friends here, as well as the relationship between Joe and Patricia. Now, I can almost compare some of this to The Karate Kid. People always laugh when I say that I think it's one of the best martial arts films ever made. And yes, I understand, if all you care about is the fighting, and does it look accurate, are they well trained, what style did they train, blah blah blah. Yes, of course, you might be a little disappointed, because in the film you could tell that none of these guys in real life were real martial artists. But story-wise, it actually makes perfect sense, because Daniel-san was not supposed to be a black belt. He was only supposed to have done a little bit of karate prior to us meeting him in the beginning of the film. And then, of course, he meets Mr. Miyagi, the Cobra Kais, and blah blah blah. But the movie had so much heart and soul between Miyagi, Daniel-san, and even Elizabeth Shue's character was also quite interesting, as well as the journey for our two friends here. You actually care about the characters, and you realize that the karate is really just a background aspect. Same thing you can say with the boxing in Rocky. You care about Rocky and Adrian. And even Silly Paulie, you can't help liking him a little bit, because we all know someone like that. And even in something as crazy as Terminator 2, you really cared about Sarah Connor and her son. And even Arnold's character, though he just played a robot, but you actually wanted them to succeed. Whereas in Terminator 3, you really didn't care about any of the characters. And all you really wanted was just for Arnold to say some cool lines and to see a bunch of explosions and just to be entertained. However, in American Ninja, it delivered all that fun stuff that you kind of expect from a movie like this, but it had so much more. And you really see this in this scene between Joe and Jackson. And it's also rare in this world that you actually see people admitting when they make a mistake, which Jackson does in this case.
Curtis Jackson is man enough to admit when he's wrong.
And though Joe doesn't want to fight, he still ends up earning the respect from Jackson and from all the other men, and from then on nobody bothers him. Okay, the movie came out in the 80s, and the action genre during those days sort of took things to a whole nother level. And ninja movies were actually pretty new at the time, so maybe the filmmakers back in those days could get away with stuff in action films that they can't do today. It was simply a different time, but to watch it today I think is still a lot of fun, and for guys my age it sort of takes us back to a time when action movies in Hollywood were like the Wild West. Now technically they did around 5 American Ninja movies, even though Michael Dudikoff only appeared in 1, 2 and 4, and the first one of course is the best. Personally, I enjoyed the sequel as well, even though story-wise it started to get a little out of control with those genetically created ninjas. Nonetheless, it was alright too. Anyway fellas, thanks for checking in and watching the video all the way to the end. If you want to see more content like this, action movies, martial arts, and real manly stuff, then please hit that like and subscribe button. Take it easy guys, I'll see you next time.